Star Wars is the biggest trilogy ever created, bar none. Now for me, it was one of the biggest stories as I grew up, and the toys, they were something to behold. Now George Lucas had the Midas touch. Certainly back in the 70s and early 80s, Indiana Jones was another of his huge series, and tail end terrors aside on both, they did become huge beacons for video games. Indy was one of the greatest point-and-click adventures of the early PC and 16-bit Commodore Amiga days, going on to create the greatest of all time in Secret of Monkey Island. And from the likes of Empire Strikes Back on the VCS, the Star Wars Arcade, X-Wing, Dark Forces and beyond, they've all become as much game lore as movie. Sadly, Lucas did not do any of these behemoths justice following in those origins, but Disney have certainly seen fit to go a few leagues better and completely destroy the Star Wars saga, like a bull in a china shop. Now, in a complete dark side turn of events, stepped forward EA, of all companies, to salvage the essence of Star Wars and burn the candle for it. Battlefront was a cosmetically pleasing attempt, but last year's Fallen Order was a perfect amalgamation of the epic tale meet Jedi Knight. On the back of the small teaser that came with Battlefront, X-Wing, Motive, who helped ship Battlefront 2, is back in the cockpit with a game that clearly started life as a VR-centric extension of that demo, but with a story, multiplayer and more to boot. Here with the PS4 version, I step in and engage both 2D and 3D builds to go into a galaxy far, far away. What are the chances of EA getting 2 wins in a row?
Never tell me the odds.
Even though this started life as a VR title, business being business means that money needs to be made, and therefore it's now a multi-platform release on Xbox, PC and PS4, and that means you get a 2D and a VR version, for formats that can support it obviously, so PC and PS4. Now, being based on Battlefront missions, it should be of little surprise this is running on the Frostbite engine, version 3 no less, that powers much from Battlefield 1, 5, Battlefield 2, FIFA, and it really kicked this generation off. This means 60 FPS is the target across all platforms, and being a VR focused title from its grounding, it actually delivers well on that, but more later. It also has a clear arcade-like presentation and gameplay hook, with a simple mission design, linear levels and AI across the single-player interleave storyline. This was the first surprise, and the tone of the story, the acting and the amount of decent pre-rendered cinematics, which in VR feel like you'll watch them in your very own personal cinema. These are accompanied by these pre-mission and post-mission chats and briefings that basically bond you with your team so you feel like you're part of a squad. With a relatively lonely single ship out in space, it's an essence of the title to make you feel like part of a squad, and this is all delivered by loads of chatter, banter as it all unfolds and the mission plays out. The variety and quality is excellent, with random comments, calls for help or heads up, making the whole thing feel very personal.
Mash the jamming ships. And get back before the cantina closes.
I think Commander Jave skipped that in the briefing. Thanks, Otto. We'll be careful.
Last of the ties.
We need to take out that Gazanti cruiser as well.
Now, sound is a huge part of the saga, and here from the iconic X-Wing opening wings, the R2 unit bleep, laser blasts or the TIE fighter howling past, it really drives the excitement and commitment to the missions. You can hear direction and chatter all the time, some battles are epic, and the sheer chaos around you feels so good because the game delivers on one of the richest soundscapes in movies. The other 50% of that is the timeless John Williams soundtrack, from Vader's theme, The Empire's March and Leia's ballads. You recognise each one and it just ramps up the immersion factor even more. Playing this with decent headphones is the true way to experience what is an audio bonanza at times, helped in no small part by the swamped source material the team have access to. I never grow tired of the Star Wars audio even after all these years, and Motive have not disappointed here again.
Love to be the hero.
That's all the TIE fighters. On your wing.
Ben Burtt was simply far beyond his time, still delivering today, as is John Williams. Now, playing the game itself, once you're into the gameplay, it's fun, it's enjoyable, but it is repetitive. Obviously, you're based in a ship flying through space or through planet areas and blowing stuff up. That's essentially what the game is. But the most important part is it's fun. It's a huge amount of fun. It's accompanied by superb visuals, atmosphere, and that sound and music all adds to that. The controls are really fluid. You use the left stick for pitch and the right stick for yaw, and then you can control the speed and throttle with the left stick as well. It's all very smooth and persistent, and it all feels different across each of the very wide selection of ships you can pick from, which you can also customize with little trinkets on the dashboard, color schemes if you want to get into that. Each and every ship looks detailed inside. The cockpits are absolutely superb, and that's where you spend all your time admiring the beauty on offer. Now, it does bring us to the biggest difference, apart from all the visuals and interaction, is the control system. This game started life as a VR title. That's pretty evident, and it plays and feels so much better in VR. It's literally a completely different game. Now, it's really good and it's excellent in 2D, and I'm trying to show you this obviously with VR in 2D on a screen, but once you play this in 2D and then play it in VR, it's very hard to go back because the amount of atmosphere, interaction and control that you lose. You can't move your head around in the 2D version. You can look around you, and you do look around you as you're flying. You get so into the battles, following a TIE fighter as it comes overhead, looking up as you turn quickly, changing the throttle, shifting around, weaving in and out of laser blasts. There's so many epic moments in here that I go right back to my childhood days, thinking back in the early 80s that one day I'll be able to sit in my own chair in my own house with a helmet on my head and actually feel like Luke Skywalker in the Death Star battle, or Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon if it was actually in there. It's very childish and it's very exciting and it's all very, giddy, but it works. That's the whole point of it, trying to work that way. And it really, there's no better game I can play or stick on somebody else's head if you're into Star Wars and show how VR transforms games. Flying games and spaceship games are probably the best there are out in space because there's no real relation to the real world, therefore you're just completely immersed in this experience that you couldn't possibly experience in real life. And sickness levels are really low, but obviously I've been playing VR for quite a few years now, so I'm not the best person. If you're brand spanking new to VR games, then some of the pitching, rolling around and doing barrel rolls, you might get a bit queasy then, but overall, love the game. It plays beautifully. If you can play it in VR. That's the best way to play it. It's still a great game in 2D, but it's transformative in VR. So on to those graphics and visuals. Resolution first, the PS4 is a native 1920 by 1080p. Obviously coming from a VR based title, it holds that pretty much all the time. I didn't see any points where it drops below. I'm not saying it isn't dynamic, it would be stupid if it wasn't, but it doesn't drop very often if it does. And the PS4 Pro goes a little bit better, 2560 by 1440. It does look like it goes up to 1800p, but it might be just the TAA working on there, but it definitely seems to have a slight dynamic element on that. But the increase in clarity stands out due to the heavy TA and kind of noisy image it has overall. So the Pro is definitely the one to choose if you can. But where the game really differs and stands out on the Pro is in the VR mode. So the VR mode on both versions is excellent, don't get me wrong. It has all the elements, all the fun, all the sound, all the joys I've just mentioned. But the quality of the visuals and the resolution are the biggest sacrifices. So the PS4 in VR mode is actually only a quarter resolution of the full PS4 non-VR mode. That's right, 960 by 540 appears to be its highest point. The PS4 Pro comes in at 960 by 1080. Now both of them scale down to 960 by 540. They're definitely dynamically scaled. So the PS4 in VR mode is 2 times the resolution of the PS4 version, but it dynamically scales, so it's not always 2 times, and there's points where it can look very similar. You can see examples on screen. But what really stands out on the PS4 version, the Pro version, is the fact that there's enhancements to geometry, there's more triangles, there's enhancements to decals, texture quality, lighting. It's all better in PS4 Pro than it is on PS4. And you can see it, you can notice it in the cockpit. Here's a screenshot here of comparing the two. You can see the difference in both elements of items and scratches and scuffs that are missing and just lighting and additional materials that are missing. So overall, it's a cutback. It's a shame that the game doesn't look as good as it does in the standard version in VR, but once you're in it, you don't really notice it. But it's definitely better looking on PS4 and PS4 Pro in the 2D version. You've got much better PBR materials, more lighting, better shadows, bloom, more light sources outside, more particles. Everything is obviously ramped up significantly due to the greatly reduced load on the GPU and CPU and what it's having to render in real time. But it's far too limited for that version to really stand out. You can't move your head, like I say, and it loses all the impact that the whole cockpits have. You can't even look around and notice everything else in there. There's lots of nice touches in the visuals, multiple light sources, shadow casting light sources. You can see the difference in resolution of the two light sources in certain areas when you're talking to people. The materials in the cockpit and the ships and the explosions, particle effects, alpha effects, they're all very, very good. They're all cut down in VR, so the lower resolution, but overall all of this makes sense because there's a lot more work going on here. You can see here as an example of the two screens. So remember, in VR you have to render 2 images at once, and normally this is at 60 FPS for the game render, so the logic, the loop, the animation render, and then the head movement is time warped and interpolated back to 120 FPS. This game doesn't do it, so that's one of the reasons why you get this judder, you get this movement. But all of that means you're making a bigger sacrifice on the performance. You can see this dual screen, so it's having to render the same image twice. So everything else being equal, that means the CPU's working twice as hard and the GPU's working twice as hard. So that's why you're instantly halving the resolution and then some, because you've then got to add in all the additional elements that VR needs. The dual render of alphas, animation, skinning, vertex calculations, all of that is adding huge amounts on the GPU and CPU, and that also includes bandwidth because you're having to draw twice the amount at any one time. And this isn't a simple duplication of the same image, it's 2 viewports, perspective to your eye, so it mirrors how your eyes work in real life, creating 2 images from a very similar point of view but a different perspective, and that is just an additional load. It's like rendering 2 games at once. And this is where the PS5 will really step up its game. If games get a simple patch to improve the performance and quality modes, there'll be resource there to do it, certainly the CPU, bandwidth and GPU, and then on top of that, games that really use this and take advantage of the PS5 will be even better in VR, but much closer to what we're seeing in the 2D version here. So the fact that it's not time warped back to 120 FPS, it's a little bit of a shame because it really helps these games. It doesn't ruin it at all, but you can feel it at certain points. And on top of this, there's some other optimization issues. It crashed twice on PS4 Pro, and I had a perpetual load. Nothing major, but minor things to pick up and note. The multiplayer is very good. That was seamless, straight in, straight out, no problems at all, and it really works excellent in multiplayer. And then we'll get to the performance section. And the base version, like I say, does run very well. You can see frame rate activity on screen at the moment. It's close to 60 on both. The Pro is far closer than the PS4. There are some heavier moments in other battles. It never really pushes any more than... It pushes to 50 milliseconds in some of the cutscenes, the real-time cutscenes, but most gameplay, it's never more than 33 milliseconds. So it's very, very light. It's really smooth and consistent game overall. There's no problems with the performance. There's a few dips here and there, like I say, but nothing really to get too concerned about. It's quite a solid-performing title. And that about wraps up my review. I think the summary of the game is it's a perfect delivery of the Star Wars space shoot 'em up that you could have dreamed of as a child. It's perfect, it delivers on all aspects of that. There could be more variety in the levels, there could be more variety in some of the conversations. There's certainly a lot more that could be done with this, but it's only £30, so it certainly delivers great value. And like I say, the VR mode wins all day, every day. It's the only way to play the game. It really flows fluidly and you feel like a proper fighter pilot. It's almost a modern day version of going to the arcade, playing something that you just couldn't get at home, that was blown away, like a movable cabinet or something like Afterburner with a hydraulic cabinet you just simply couldn't play at home. Now you can if you've got a VR helmet. I'm sure it looks even better in the PC version, which is just a shame because I don't have a VR helmet from Oculus or anybody else that I can test it out with. But right now it's the most fun I've had in VR for about a year or so, and it's one of the best games I've played in VR because it's so perfectly suited. And for me, if you are into VR, you've got it on the PC, I would rush out and buy this game if you're into Star Wars in any way, shape or form, because it does not disappoint. Quality game, great value for £30. Cheesy, a little repetitive, but just like Star Wars, they hit the nail on the head. Anyway, that's it. I hope you guys and girls enjoyed this. Remember, I'm completely self-funded and independent, so anything you can do to help, support and share, that's really appreciated. Please subscribe if you like what I do, and I'll catch you guys and girls on the next one.